Let's interview people.
Yeah, so we're about to go out on campus, and we're going to ask people about the color line and see if they even know what the color line is, and if they do, how much they know about it. Then we're going to ask people about white privilege and if whites have it better in society, and if they think they do, how much better, and things like that. And then lastly, we're going to ask people, about themselves, how they identify with sexual orientation, their race, their gender, those kind of questions. So we're going to hit campus, interview some people, and then we'll come back and wrap it up and tell you guys what we found.
I'm here with
Jonathan.
Jonathan. All right. So the first question we're going to ask, what do you know what the color line is?
Well, now that it's been explained to me, just from my best knowledge, is being culturally sensitive to other people's races, color, or creed, or mostly color, I guess, of skin.
All right.
I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good answer. The second question is, do you think whites are more privileged than non-whites?
I really can't answer that question as being a white person. Like I said, we all have our struggles. I can't answer it. I've never been a black person. I've never been a Mexican person or Spanish person. Like, I can't answer that question, really, truthfully.
Then the last question is, if it's all right, what do you?
I mean, hold on. Let's go back to that question. So sorry. I mean, do I think that white people have privilege in, like, socially, like in our
just in society as a whole?
Socioeconomically? I think to a certain degree they do, but I think it goes with whichever classification of race you're within. I mean, it's just kind of like, I would suspect that if I were to apply at a barbershop where it was all black folks, and I was like, hey, I can fade like no other, I'm a fade master, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're like, would I have an advantage in that shop? No, I think that's like, but that's just one little area that you painted. I think on an overall, like, if you painted a blanket, yeah, sure, white people probably have more of a upper hand because there's more white people. I mean, I think it's just people classified. Whether we like it or not, we generalize. We're gonna associate with what we are, and I don't think it's meant or even bred into us, necessarily taught to us. But I think we just naturally go that direction. And it's our responsibility, really, to determine that within ourselves and try to be cognizant of it and break that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, man. God damn. All right, well, last question. What do you identify your sexual orientation, gender, and your race?
Well, I am white heterosexual male.
All right, cool.
So, and that's how I identify myself.
All right, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right
My
on.
man, you the black handshake. Yeah, snap.
How's it going? So I wanted to interview you today and ask you a couple questions. The first one is on the color line. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the color line, or do you know what it is, or if it exists or not?
I hadn't heard of the color line, but I do know what the color line is now.
Okay. And what do you know about the color line?
So it's pretty much like there's, especially from what you just said, it's so there's two corners to the line, which is kind of gonna be like you're either white or you're not white, and then you either fall in between or somewhere there, and kind of behavior analysis of that, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. That's good. Okay. And then the second question I have for you is this idea of white privilege. If
Mm-hmm.
whites have certain advantages in society that other minorities may not have.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that exists?
It does exist a little bit. I wouldn't say it's as profound as people kind of make it out to be. There are some privileges that white people get that maybe others don't. Or I think there's less problems they have to deal with. Right? I mean, like, being a person of color myself, I feel like for me I have to jump through 4 loops, whereas they can just jump through 2 loops to get something done.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not too much, but I feel there is a little.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question I have to ask you, if you don't mind, will you identify your gender, your sexual orientation, and your race?
I identify as female. My race is I'm Indian, but not American Indian. I'm from the country India, so I'm Asian, I would say. And what was the third one?
And then the last one, your sexual orientation.
Yeah. I identify as straight.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cole. I'm here with Jordan Jackson.
Jackie.
Okay. I'm here to ask you a few questions. The first question is going to be, do you guys know what the color line is, and do you think it exists?
I'm not quite sure.
Just whatever you think the color line is.
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, do you think whites are more privileged in society than non-whites?
What's that?
Can you go into detail about that? Like what you think, some of the things that white people have more benefits towards non-whites?
Like
The stuff that you kind of have personal
like
experience.
a little example of it, like police brutality in a way.
Rather not say.
I mean, you could just, if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. And then the next question is what you kind of identify as, your sexual orientation, your gender, and race.
I'm African American, heterosexual, and both gender, male.
I'm Mexican. I am heterosexual, and I am.
The gender.
Oh,
gender
female.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Alright, I'm Jaylon. I'm here with my man Charles. Alright, first question I gotta ask is, do you know what the color line is?
Yeah, a little bit.
And I love the Trinity. It's like some backtracking there. And there's some climbing, there's some cracks. And
There's one in
but
society. You know, in my opinion, I do feel like there's a color line in society. You know, I don't feel like I can go everywhere and be who I was. You know, especially coming from the Bay Area and stuff. You know, taking a lot of classes and stuff and learning about race and whatnot. Yeah, there's definitely a color line. For me, that color line is definitely being a mixed kid. You know, it starts in the household. So
Yeah.
you know, I can't act the same way around one side of my family that I can around my other side because one side's not used to it. You know, so yeah,
Definitely.
I know a little bit about it.
Second question, do you think whites are more privileged than non-whites?
Absolutely. I do feel like, I mean, it's just, it's kind of how the society's been, for decades now. It's been like that, going back to, civil rights days where, whites got to sit on the front of the bus, we had to drink from different water fountains, Jim Crow laws. That's the main example of white privilege at its finest. We had to take tests that were 15 times, 20 times harder just to vote. So yeah, definitely.
And then the last question is, what is your race, sexual orientation, and gender?
My race, my dad's black from San Francisco. My mom's white from Minnesota. I'm a male, and what's the last one?
What's your sexual orientation?
Straight. I like women.
Ha ha! Hey, me too though. Me too. Hey, good looking, my man. Yeah.
All right, guys. So welcome back. We just got done wrapping up our last interviews, and we're kind of going to break down the three parts of the questions we talked about. And so to start with the color line, I think some people were definitely more prepared than others to talk about it. Some of our interviewees, they had heard of the color line before, or they maybe they talked about it at home or with their peers, but they knew something about it, whether it was in depth or not. They had some experience with it, but then others had none. So I think it was interesting to see the differences there. And really the point of talking about the color line for us, the reason we wanted to put it in the video was just because you have to start conversation, if you want anything to get done. And so when you go up to, students on campus, just random students, and you ask them about something like the color line, it starts this conversation that we need to have. And I think the more you can have these conversations and the more, we can be open about these things and talk about the problems we have in our society, I think it can help us in the future. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but the first thing I think that needs to be done is you have to, start a conversation, because without a conversation, there's nothing. And I do think it went, pretty well with the people we talked with. And as far as white privilege goes, I mean, what do you got on that?
Yeah, I think the main reason why we asked that question is just to get kind of a view on what people think society is constructed as, and I think we tried to get a wide variety of perspectives. And for the most part, I think people do believe that white people have some advantage in society. Whether or not they think it's minuscule or a lot of benefits, that's just more based off of what they've kind of personally experienced. And going back to the interviews, I think one of them talked about how, because she was a non-white person, she talked about how it was like, hoops where she would have to go through 4, whereas a white person might have to go through 2 loops, and I think that kind of puts it into a good perspective.
Yeah, well, I've never thought about it that way. I mean, obviously, being white, like, it's clear cut. Like, I mean, there's advantages whites have that, other minorities don't have. And, I never thought about it. It's like the hoop way she put it, whereas it's not that minorities can't do certain things, but a lot of the times it takes them, twice as long or twice as many steps or 3 times as many steps. And so I think that was a good way of kind of looking at it. It kind of put it in a different perspective for me. So that was kind of cool. I got something out of interview and getting that interview done. And for the last thing, like we were asking about, gender, sexual orientation, and race. What do you guys think on that? How'd that go?
I think we asked that question just to get kind of like, I feel like it's an uncomfortable question that people don't like to discuss. Like in our class specifically, the first day of class, we had to do it, and I think it was an uncomfortable situation for a lot of people. And it was interesting to ask some people on campus and see if they were comfortable answering the question. And for the most part, all of them were comfortable in answering that question, and it wasn't really an issue. And I think that's kind of important just to get a basis of what kind of people experience in their life through their race, gender, and identity and stuff like that. So I thought it was interesting that people were so comfortable answering that question.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I mean, just by how open people were. You go up to a complete stranger and ask them what their identity is and stuff. That's personal information. And I was surprised that how open people were with it, which I think is good, because I think part of it is you got to know where you come from and you got to know about yourself before you want to learn about others. Because the more you know about yourself, the more you can connect with others, the more you can see your differences and try and work towards finding a common ground. And so I think overall the interviews went pretty well.
Absolutely.
We had different groups of people, which was nice, and thank you to them if they end up seeing this video for their time. And I think that about sums it up. Thank you everyone in class for watching. Jody, thanks for a fun semester. We learned a lot. Thank you.